Hello, and welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another edition of the London Roundup Show. I'm your host, George Dagless. Joining me this week, Ned Holmes and Marcus Ali. Ned, how you getting on?
Yeah, good. Thanks, George. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to another week of the London show. Marcus, how are we?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Looking forward to the relentless action of the three leagues as the weekend approaches, as always.
Yeah, it's going to be another busy one. It's been a busy week as well. Obviously, Carlisle Cup action and a League One fixtures to get into. So let's get straight into that, and we'll start with Fulham's result against Leeds. So Carabao Cup action, we'll start with that. Obviously, plenty going on earlier this week. The 4 teams involved from London, or in terms of the clubs we were interested in, at least. Fulham at home to Leeds. Ned, you were there at Craven Cottage. 0-0 was the full-time result. Went to penalties, and obviously Leeds emerged victorious in the spot kicks. What did you make, first of all, Fulham's performance?
Yeah, I think it was extremely encouraging. You know, that there were obviously some changes forced by sort of injuries for Leeds. You had sort of Calvin Phillips back at centre back and a few young players in there. But you know, to name a team that was 11 changes and then go toe to toe with the Premier League opposition, create equal, if not arguably, a few of the better chances of the game, it is massively encouraging, and I think it just really shows the scary depth that Fulham have got at the moment. To make that many changes and name a side that was that strong, a Nomar and Reed in central midfield, Mawson and Hector at the back, it was really impressive, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that team sheet and I kind of felt that, looking at that, that's a team that could easily win promotion, isn't it, in the Championship? And like you say, it made so many changes, Marco Silva. Do you think potentially, looking at what you saw on Tuesday night, there are any players that perhaps stake themselves a claim going into the weekend's action?
Yeah, I mean, the centre-back duo of Hector and Mawson were absolutely brilliant, I thought. I mean, it's no surprise given that I'd guess 20 of the 24 teams in the Championship, and maybe all 24 would probably want either Mawson or Hector in their starting 11. Like, such the strength of depth that Fulham has, they can really just use them as sort of backups. But those two were brilliant. Some massive blocks from Hector in particular, and Mawson. We know how good he is bringing the ball out from the back, and he showed that again. Marco Silva actually said in the press conference afterwards that Mawson in particular was really pushing that starting duo at the moment, and I think it'd be brilliant because he's obviously had so many issues with injuries in recent years. It'd be great to see him sort of get another chance to be a regular starter at a Championship side that's going to be pushing for promotion. Thought Domingos Quino in the midfield showed glimpses of just what a talented player he is. He's one, I think, to watch for Fulham fans. It might take a little while before we see him in the starting 11 regularly, but I think he's one to look out for. And Rodrigo Nunes had a lot of chances. I think maybe after the game, he might have been thinking, could he have converted a few of those? And he obviously missed a penalty. But I think it's important to remember, he's new to this country, new to English football. He's only 20, and he was getting in all the right positions really on Tuesday night.
Yeah, definitely. Marcus, just quickly on Fulham before we move on. Do you think potentially them bowing out at this stage, it could be a blessing in disguise in terms of their promotion change? Obviously, they've got a big squad, but I think it's probably fair to say they perhaps weren't going to win the Carabao Cup this year, and gives them a little bit of extra focus now purely on the Championship, whilst obviously we wait for the FA Cup to kick into gear in January for them.
Yeah, I think the expectations are so high that Marco Silva maybe can't take his eye off the ball in terms of the Championship until potentially he's even got a lead at the top of the division. I think the one main frustration out of going out of the Cup would have been that it's just a loss of a chance to give minutes to the likes of, we saw Anthony Knockout start, and just that second string, just to keep them all ticking over minutes wise, match fitness wise, and just keeping a bit of morale in the squad. I think that'll be the main overriding a disappointment rather than progressing any much further in the League Cup itself. So yeah, I think hopefully it could streamline their focus a little bit, and obviously they're not running away with it yet as everyone maybe expects them to. So yeah, in that regard, I think Marco Silva might see it as a blessing in disguise. Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. Fulham going out then at the Carabao Cup on penalties. Let's go to a team that progressed on penalties. QPR were successful against Everton eventually, an entertaining 2-2 draw in the 90 minutes, went to penalties and QPR won 8-7 on spot kicks. I was there at the Kyan Prince Foundation Stadium on Tuesday night. It was a very entertaining game. As Mark Warburton put it after the shootout, he said it was a classic cup tie. I think that was a pretty fair assessment of what went on in the 90 minutes beforehand. It was Jimmy Dunn who hit the winning spot kick for Rangers. Interestingly enough, I think whereas Marco Silva changed his team quite a lot for Fulham, Warburton opted to name a very strong QPR side. Ned, what do you make of that decision from the QPR boss? Perhaps a little bit risky, but gives QPR another chance of a good cup run, and obviously we'll get to the draw that they've got from progressing against Everton in a minute.
Yeah, and it certainly is a risk because if you pick up an injury for one of those key players, then it perhaps, I don't know, reflects badly on Warburton sort of rolling the dice there. But I actually think it's really important in terms of keeping momentum. They were all over Bristol City last weekend, but at the end of the day, they lost. If they'd have then been rolled over, named a weakened team, being rolled over by Everton in midweek and then lost to West Brom, suddenly a lot of that early season positivity is gone. You've lost 3 on the bounce. You almost don't know where your next win's coming from. So in that sense, I think it's certainly a gamble worth taking and one that's paid off for them, really.
Charlie Austin obviously getting an impressive double. I believe he's a Liverpool fan, so I think he very much enjoyed getting those 2 goals against Everton. Certainly gave the away end as much stick as possible when he scored his 2 goals, and obviously scored in the shootout as well. But I think as well, Marcus, it was pleasing to see Luke Amos coming onto the field. Obviously, been out of the game with injury for nearly a year now. He's played a few minutes for QPR B team and at lower levels away from the senior side. But really sort of positive, I guess, for QPR and for him himself to get back on it and get those minutes under his belt in the second half.
Yeah, is a real huge boost going into that next run of fixtures, just to know you've got another body and a player as capable as Luke Amos to come back into the side. We've even seen Yohan Barbe playing centre mid so far this season for QPR. So to bring back a player of Amos's calibre, he's shown that he can be a consistent player at championship level. So it really is a huge boost. I think maybe we're sort of taking our eye off the ball in terms of the money that could be involved of QPR reaching a League Cup quarter final. Obviously, so many championship clubs ravaged by the loss of income during COVID. Maybe there was a little elbow from the QPR hierarchy saying, if we can just get past QPR, and the revenue that could bring into the club could be even more than, say, well, we'll get on to how we think they're going to get on against West Bromwich Albion on Friday night. So yeah, it's a huge win for QPR, and as Ned mentioned, obviously keeping that momentum rolling, and what an excellent start to the season.
Yeah, certainly a great result for QPR against Everton. Millwall, unfortunately, did not have as much luck against Premier League opposition earlier this week. Yeah, the Lions welcomed the Foxes to the Den. I suppose the Den technically is a Fox's home, but I'm not overly sure about that. That's why I write about football and don't talk about animals. But 2-0 to Leicester it was at the Den. Ademola Lookman and Kelechi Iheanacho getting the goals for the... Gary Rowett said Conor Mahoney's got great talent, but he needs to increase his work rate. Do you think that's a fair amount of comment?
Sorry, you glitched out. You're talking to me?
I was, Ned, yeah. Sorry
about that. That must be my Wi-Fi. Yeah, I do think that's a fair comment. I think, that there's clearly a talented player there. You see he's one of those players that can sort of create a moment of magic and do something to unlock a defence, whip a ball in, hit a long-range strike, pop up in a great area. But I do think often he's a bit too inconsistent and perhaps therefore he needs to be contributing more without the ball as well. And if he can listen to Rowett and really, I guess, evolve that side of his game, it'd be massive for his development all round. So I think you've got to back Rowett there because if he can add that side to his game, it will make him a much better player.
Certainly could be. Let's just round off one final fixture then in the League Cup. And Ned, it was a game that you were at again earlier this week, AFC Wimbledon away at Arsenal. So a little bit of a London derby, although not one you see too often. Arsenal went in front via Alexandre Lacazette, but they needed the whole game really to really put it to bed. It took them until towards the last 15 minutes of the match for them to get out of sight, eventually winning 3-0 with Emil Smith-Rowe and Eddie Nketiah getting the other 2 goals. What do you make of Wimbledon's performance at the Emirates?
I think, but by the end we saw Arsenal's quality shine through. But while Wimbledon will perhaps have hoped to sort of lay more of a glove on an Arsenal defence, which has certainly looked shoddy through the start of the season at times, there's still a lot of positives to be taken. I think particularly conceding that goal early, a bit of a rash challenge to give away a penalty, going down, and there was a huge amount of pressure. The Emirates was fairly loud at that point, and it could have been easy for the Dons to go back into their shell, start pumping the ball long to Palmer or just getting it out at every opportunity. But they really sort of grew into the game. They stuck to their guns. They were confident bringing the ball out, comfortable in possession, looking to ping it around, create space, throw players forward. And I thought that was hugely encouraging. I wrote in the match report, it was a defeat that maybe a game that certainly didn't play out the way that the Wimbledon fans would have been hoping for. But I think the performance, the way they stood strong for until that last 20 minutes really is hugely encouraging. And even though they lost, I don't think it's a result that should really take away from their momentum in the league and should really take any of the positivity that's currently at the club away.
Chris Thorpe, one of our regular guests as well on the London show, not with us this week, unfortunately. He says, question for Ned. Obviously, he's a Wimbledon fan as well. What do you make of Wimbledon's style of play? I mean, it sounds like you're pretty impressed with what you saw from the Dons, Ned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest. I was expecting, I was expecting them to be a little more open than at the back, given the quality of the opposition. Martinelli and Cedric down the right caused a lot of problems. And in the second half, Tavares was really torturing them. But even though that was the case, I thought that the defenders put in a real shift. And then in possession, that they continued to knock the ball about. That there was a point early on in the second half where they played a long ball up to Palmer, who knocked it down to Asal. And I thought maybe at that point, Robinson, having got a bit of luck there, might shift his game plan a bit and go more direct, but all credit to them, they stuck to trying to knock the ball forward, play it between the lines, and go for it in a sense. And I think they can be really proud of it. So yeah, I was impressed, to be honest. First time I've really seen Wimbledon live under Mark Robinson.
Certainly, plenty that they can take from that performance back into their league, where obviously they've started really well in League One. Just before we round off the Carabao Cup chat, Marcus, obviously QPR, they're a draw. They're going to be at home to Sunderland in the next round next month. It's probably a game they're going to feel as though they can win, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big one for both clubs there. I think they'll both see the opportunity of potentially making it into the quarterfinals of the League Cup, and maybe a sort of return to former glories definitely will be on the minds of Sunderland going into that match. It's a great opportunity for QPR. I think it was last season we saw Brentford make the semi-finals of the League Cup. QPR, another Championship London club, maybe they can emulate that at the Kai and Prince Stadium. That they've got a chance against anyone. It's a horrible kind of cauldron atmosphere for an away player and away fans. So I think they've got a great chance. It's a nice draw against Sunderland, definitely in the last 16. No matter how well Sunderland are playing in League One, QPR have got to be favourites, and Mark Warburton will be confident of progressing, and that's just another string to Warburton's bow in terms of what a great start to the season they've made, potentially a place in that last 8.
Yeah, they've certainly made a good start, and I'll certainly be relatively pleased with that draw. Okay, that's enough Carabao Cup chat for this week. There was one other London club in action though, and that was Charlton Athletic in League One. Marcus, your team were away at Gillingham earlier this week. Went in front via Elliot Lee. Unfortunately, were pegged back by the Kent club via Ben Purrington own goal. What do you make of the performance overall from your team?
Much improved. So much encouragement, actually. I think maybe that speaks more to how bad it's been rather than how good that performance was. But you have to recognise the improvement that was shown. Charlton deserved the 3 points for me. Double the expected goals. I think Gillingham only had one shot on target in the whole match, and Charlton had close to 10. They dominated, really, particularly in the first half. Gillingham came into it a lot more in the second half, kicking towards their home fans. The equaliser was fortunate. But a ball's come in, bounces back off the post, and it hits Ben Purrington and goes into the empty net. So that to get pegged back, as you mentioned, by that was maybe a bit of a sickener for the travelling fans. But at this stage, the positives is all you have to cling to, and there were plenty to take where there haven't been in previous weeks and previous performances. So there is at least something to take into the much tougher test of Portsmouth this weekend. Elliot Lee, of course, getting his first goal in the league, and Corey Blackett-Taylor was probably the main plus of the whole match, getting his first league start and got the assist in the first half. His pace was frightening, gave, I think, it's Robbie McKenzie, the Gillingham left back, all kinds of problems, particularly in the first half. So yeah, Charlton have got the luxury now of a nice squad, nice size, so that even when things haven't been going well, Nigel Adkins can make so many changes, and they can, albeit it was only a draw, but create a lot of chances and feel like they should have got the winner against Gillingham.
Certainly a little bit more of a positive vibe around that result than, compared to that Wickham loss, obviously, and the loss at home to Cheltenham not too long ago as well. One sort of positive I'd probably pick up, Marcus, if it's fair to say, is Alex Gilby coming back, getting back in the fold. Obviously been injured for a long time. I think under Lee Bowyer, he probably, started quite slowly, perhaps didn't have the impact that was hoped for since his, arrival for MK Dons. But I think under Adkins towards the end of the season, he really started to hit his stride and showed some decent form. Do you think he's going to be, an extra catalyst for Charlton as they look to climb up the table in the weeks ahead?
I definitely hope so. You're completely right. He did struggle to settle down and then really hit the ground running at the back end of last season. The season kind of ended at a horrible time, really. He was just hitting his straps under Nigel Adkins. Adkins has spoken about how he was such a crucial player in that run that Adkins had towards the back end of last season. Just one loss in 10 matches under him. So yeah, hopefully Gilby can come back and hit the ground running. We're yet to really know. I think just one example off the top of my head was Kai Havertz at Chelsea last season, having a really tough sort of recovery and getting back into the season after having COVID and suffering for that for a longer period of time. It's long COVID with Alex Gilby as well. So whether he can be reintegrated straight away and start and be playing 90 minutes week in, week out, I'm not so sure. So what to expect in that regard, I'm not completely certain, but it's definitely a huge boost. We've needed a player like him with his physique, his eye for a pass in central areas. So yeah, Alex Gilby's a huge plus for Charlton, and hopefully we can see it from the start against Portsmouth. Yeah,
we'll see what happens this weekend. Speaking of the weekend, it's time to look ahead to the EFL London club fixtures for the 7 clubs that are in the EFL. And we'll start with Friday night. QPR travel to the Hawthorns to play West Brom even. It's a big game up near the top of the Championship table. Ned, you were obviously at QPR's game last week, the last league game they had against Bristol City, and you've obviously hinted that they were unlucky to come away with nothing from that game. What sort of approach are you expecting them to take against the West Brom team that obviously hugely fancied to win promotion this year?
I think it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, the Barrys obviously, under Valérien Ismaël, provide this such unique challenge that the high tempo, the direct style of play. I'm not sure people were really expecting Darnell Furlong's long throw to be such a weapon, but that's what it's proved. It's almost been their most dangerous weapon this season, and that throws up its own challenges to a QPR side that, while they've impressed going forward at times, that there's no doubt that they're going to give up chances. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see, they've obviously got that Device, Dickey, Barbe backline. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see Austin and Dyke start together to give them a bit of extra height in sort of both boxes. And beyond that, I think that they'll probably look to shore up the midfield with Ball and Johansson, if both are available, which I think they are, and then one of Chair or Willock in front. I think it's going to be a massive test for them, even though the Baggies have, come a little bit unstuck in recent weeks.
How do you see this one going, Ned, in terms of score prediction?
I do think that West Brom are going to have slightly too much for them at the Hawthorns on a Friday night. Warburton obviously played his a lot of his starters in midweek, and we know the intensity needed to keep up with the West Brom team, throughout the 90 minutes. So I've got West Brom to edge this 2-1.
Okay, Marcus, how do you see it going?
I agree with Ned. I think West Brom might just be too strong. A lot more preparation time than QPR. And I think Sam McCallum, who picked up an injury in the cup match, could be quite a big miss down the left-hand side. So I'm going to go for 2-0 West Brom, a little bit more comfortable. QPR won't disgrace themselves. They're always going to be dangerous. But I think West Brom will be able to get back to winning ways.
Yeah, it certainly should be competitive. Tom Main's got in touch as well with his thoughts on the Friday night game at the Hawthorn. Says QPR overall solid with a decent squad. West Brom wobbling a bit but have undeniable quality. Another draw question mark. Well, you two have gone for a West Brom win, and in hindsight, having seen this, I won't go for a draw as well. I can't just claim to be influenced by that. I think West Brom might just edge it too. But as you said there, Marcus, QPR always very competitive, particularly in games like this. So it could be a close run thing. Let's move away from QPR's trip to the Midlands, or the West Midlands at least. Let's talk about Millwall's trip now to the East Midlands. They're going to Nottingham Forest. Marcus, Steve Cooper's first game in charge at the City Ground. It quite possibly could be the worst time for Millwall to head to Forest and play them, really.
Well, it depends how you look at the new manager bounce. There's a lot of pressure on the players, even more so than I think there was last week under Reid at Huddersfield Town. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure he'll get a warm welcome. Of course, he will. Steve Cooper. It's been a really brief period in between the two appointments. Obviously, Houghton only leaving about a week or so ago. So I'm sure Cooper will be wanting to hit the ground running. Millwall, of course, in midweek cup action where Forest weren't. You could argue how much of an advantage that is. I think Millwall did rotate quite a lot. Of course, star man Jed Wallace was kept wrapped up in cotton wool for this match. So I think Millwall, it's always a tricky match. We just had a comment talking about QPR going for a draw. Millwall are the draw specialists, aren't they? And they probably take that against with the momentum building at the City Ground at the moment. And of course, Forest have such good players, particularly in attack on paper. So I think, it's a tricky one. In terms of my prediction, I think Millwall might be able to hold them. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I really like the Millwall defence, the back three, Cooper, Ballard, Murray, Wallace. Considering how Forest have not been firing going forward this season, I think that the Lions back line could keep them quiet and breach them maybe on the counter or from a set piece. I'm going 1-1 for this one.
Okay, yeah, no, I think I agree with that actually, Marcus. I can see Cooper eventually getting results at Forest. I think it might take a little bit longer than Reds fans might hope. So I could see a draw there, which Millwall might be fairly pleased with, although as you say, they are racking up the draws again this season as they did last year. Ned, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I've got 1-1 down as well. I just think one of the things we saw in midweek with Millwall, I thought the glaring difference between them and Leicester were the Leicester just had players that were so confident in front of goal, and that's what Millwall lack really. But that's also what Forest lack right now. As Marcus said, on paper they've got these, a raft of attacking talent. They just haven't been firing, and I do wonder if that sort of strong Millwall backline can keep them out for a little bit of time. Is the City Ground going to start to get a bit frustrated? More pressure builds. So I've got a feeling, as Marcus said, the draw specialists get another draw here, 1-1.
Yeah, and I don't think we're alone in predicting draws either. Tom Main got in touch as well. Millwall going for the Championship draw record. I don't know off the top of my head what that record is, but Millwall certainly made a good start of going for that. Tom's going for a 2-2 draw at the City Ground would be pretty entertaining. One final Championship fixture to preview. Fulham's trip to Ashton Gate against Bristol City. Ned, let's come to you. You obviously saw Bristol City last weekend. You're obviously a keen follower of Bristol City as well. Home form's not been great for the Robins. It's an opportunity for Fulham to get back to winning ways, and I think as well it's a result Fulham will need because they've lost the last two of their last three games. Lost to Reading, of course, last time out, and lost to Blackpool the Saturday before with a win at Birmingham in between. Do you think a trip to Ashton Gate is going to be a chance for them to get back to winning ways?
Yeah, I mean, I can only really see this going one way. I think it's 14 games now without a win at Ashton Gate. Pearson's never won there. And they're welcoming the side with, in my eyes, the best attack in the division. With some players that may feel like that they've got something to prove after a strong performance from their sort of squad mates in the week. I do think Bristol City have got it in them to trouble Fulham enough, but I'm not sure that they can quite. I'm not sure they've got the firepower. Bristol City were pretty lucky in that they almost scored from They didn't have that many chances against QPR. I can't see them getting that many against Fulham, and I think it's going to be 3-0 to the Cottagers.
Okay, that is a pretty emphatic result for Fulham. I think I'm going to go for a Fulham away win as well. Though I think they've just got the quality and they'll have the extra edge. Obviously, Bristol City's home form remains torrid, and it's probably not going to change against a team as good as Fulham. Marcus, how do you see it going?
Similar to Ed, I've actually got the exact same scoreline, not to keep matching each other, but yeah, I've gone for 3-0 Fulham as well. I think there's going to be matches this season where we can't really criticise the opposition too much. Fulham are just going to be able to blow teams away when it clicks. I think Bristol City, as you mentioned, maybe a little fortunate to get that win at QPR last week. Maybe there's going to be some continuation in their poor home form. Yeah, Fulham for me to run away with it.
Okay, and Tom Main's got in touch again with his prediction for that one. He's back in a similar result, Fulham win at Ashton Gate, so we'll see what happens there in the Championship. Right, let's move away from the second tier. Let's drop into the third tier. And we'll start with your team, Marcus. Charlton, big game at home to Portsmouth at the Valley. Like you mentioned earlier, a positive enough performance against Gillingham. Obviously didn't get the 3 points, but stuff to build on, I think it's fair to say, from the performance at Priestfield. How are you feeling about this game at the Valley against a Portsmouth team that's obviously going to be looking to challenge for promotion themselves this year?
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous, to be honest. I think Gillingham, it was a must-win game against a side that's in and around the relegation places. Portsmouth is nothing like that. I know they're in mid-table at the moment, but they're definitely a team that's better and will have much more lofty aspirations than finishing outside the playoff places. Ronan Curtis and Marcus Harness are, of course, incredible players to have at League One level, particularly if they're in the same side and can hit the run of form at the same time. I think Portsmouth take the win. Unfortunately, it pains me to say it, but I think two of Charlton's biggest success stories maybe from Tuesday night were Connor Washington and Corey Blackett-Taylor on the flanks. Connor Washington missed a couple of chances. Maybe it was a bit of a frustrating evening, but I think both of those players probably won't start. Washington came off with a swollen ankle at half-time, was in a protective boot, and Corey Blackett-Taylor completed his first 90 minutes for the best part of 2 years on Tuesday night. So I think that sort of understanding will be lost going into this match, which was so successful on Tuesday. Big opportunities for Jonathan Lecco and Charlie Kirk to step up to the mantle, two high-profile players at League One level. But I think Portsmouth might just have too much. I think that front three, Curtis, Harness, Marquis, you can't really ignore that.
No, you can't. Ned, how do you see this one playing out?
I think it's a strange one, given that Portsmouth will probably feel like this is a great time to play Charlton, and Charlton will probably feel like this is a great time to play Portsmouth. Pompey, similarly poor run of form, though they did start the season that bit better than Charlton. I just think at the moment, Nigel Adkins' team look like a side that don't really know how to win in sort of tight games like this, and in that sense, I think it's going to be a 2-1 Portsmouth win.
Okay, I'm going to throw a curveball and back Charlton to get a big win against Portsmouth. I think Portsmouth out of form, and I just maybe there's a little bit of rhythm building, perhaps under Adkins. Maybe I'm clutching at straws a little bit. Maybe it's because you're here, Marcus, and I have to say it. Exactly, but it was a decent performance enough, wasn't it, at Gillingham early this week? So Charlton got to start winning games at some point, and it's got to turn around for Adkins pretty soon. So I think it'd be a good place to start against a Portsmouth team that their form has dried up a little bit in recent weeks. The other League One game sees AFC Wimbledon head to Shrewsbury Town. Ned, obviously, as we mentioned, saw Wimbledon earlier on this week in the League Cup. This is probably a game that they're going to be right up for and feel as though they can get 3 points from.
Absolutely. I mean, if they play anywhere near the level that they showed at points at the Emirates, I'd expect them to waltz this. Really, I think it's 2 defeats on the bounce for them now, and they're going to be the Wimbledon guys, and they're going to be firing to get back to winning ways. And as I said previously, there have been some question marks about the Dons' defence, but the Shrewsbury side, I think, have scored 4 goals all season. I can't see them testing them that much, and to be honest, I can't see them keeping out the Wimbledon side that are going to be desperate to get back to win anyway. So I've got 4-1 Wimbledon this one.
Okay, you're going for the big scores this week. I like it. I'm going to go 2-0 to the Dons. And Marcus, how do you reckon this one's going to play out?
Spanner in the works, home win. Shrewsbury 2-1 for me. I think the trip to the Emirates might have taken a bit out of AFC Wimbledon. Obviously, they didn't perform as well in the loss to Plymouth last week. I think Shrewsbury have been slowly building a bit of momentum. Good result, getting a point at Sheffield Wednesday last week. And obviously, I'm loving predicting good things from a relegation rival in Shrewsbury Town. But no, I think Wimbledon might find this a little bit tougher than maybe on paper it suggests. I think Sam Cosgrove up top for Shrewsbury could cause a few problems. So yeah, 2-1 Shrews.
Okay, that's certainly a potential coupon buster for people that might lump on that one. So we'll see what happens there. Just before we go, let's look at Sutton United and Leyton Orient's fixtures this weekend in League Two. Sutton are playing Carlisle. They're at home to the Cumbrians. Ned, this is a game that Sutton will probably think we can get something out of.
Absolutely, a welcome return for them to Gander Green Lane. As we before they went to play Exeter, I guess it become something of a fortress for them after getting the pitch redone and everything like that. And I'm expecting them to return home with a 2-0 victory. To be honest, I think Carlisle they haven't impressed me too much this season. I'm not sure that they've been fairly inconsistent, and I think Sutton are really going to be boosted by being back home.
Okay, what's your score prediction for this one?
I had a 2-0 victory.
Okay, I'm going to go 1-0 Sutton. I think they'll just edge it. And Marcus, how do you see this one go?
Yeah, 1-0 to Sutton as well. I don't think Carlisle have matched the standards they set last season. And yeah, just continue that excellent home form. They're 7th in the expected goals table, despite being flirting with the relegation places at the moment, Sutton. So I think they can get the win again.
Okay, we'll see what happens there. If they do win that, and obviously they've still got a game in hand, you never know, they'll be there or thereabouts in the playoff places. I'm sure they'll be very happy with that from their first sort of quarter of the League Two season. And a team that's very, very pleased, no doubt, with their start to the year has to be Leyton Orient, flying high at the top of the League Two table. Second place, keeping Forest Green honest, or as honest as they can be at this early stage. The O's welcome Mansfield Town to East London this weekend. Mansfield have really dropped off form-wise and now sitting 20th in the League Two table. Can't really buy a win at the moment. Marcus, Orient have got to be pretty confident about getting 3 points here, haven't they?
Definitely. I do think it's a little closer than maybe the billing would suggest. Mansfield surely have to pick up some results at some point. Just some of the quality players in that squad. And I also think maybe if you stop Theo Archibald, do you stop Leyton Orient? I think they are a little reliant on, of course, the front three that's been so impressive for them this season. I do think they'll get the win 2-1. I think they'll edge it. I think the home advantage is so good to have the restored home support, and yeah, Kenny Jackett's boys to keep rolling on 2-1.
Okay, Ned, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I'm similar to Marcus in that he touched that Mansfield surely get a result at some point, but they're two teams at the opposite ends of the form table right now. I think Orient 9 from 4 games at home, and I feel like they're going to get 3 more points here. I'll hold my hands up at the start of the season on this show. I think I questioned whether Orient had the firepower to launch a significant promotion challenge. Clearly, they've proven me wrong. I think 6 and 7 for Harry Smith, 3 goals and 2 assists for Aaron Drinnan, and as Marcus said, Theo Archibald, really the star of the show, 3 goals, 3 assists. Those 3 have been hugely impressive, and I can't really see Mansfield keeping them out. Credit to Kenny Jackett for really getting them going and showing me up in particular. I've got 3-0 Orient this time.
Yeah, no, I think that was probably Kenny Jackett's key point at the top of his list. Proved Ned Holmes wrong.
I think to the notice board in the changing room.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can imagine that. But yeah, I think it's a clean sweep. I think Orient are going to take this one as well. Obviously, a good win last weekend as well. Bristol Rovers looking very impressive. I think there's a very good chance that Orient will keep their good form, a good start to the season up by beating Mansfield this weekend. I'll go for a 2-0 victory for the O's. Okay, that wraps up this week's EFL London Roundup show. Ned and Marcus, thank you very much for joining me this Thursday afternoon. We'll be back next Thursday for another week of All Matters EFL London. Coming up later this evening, Alfie Burns is here for a Huddersfield Town fan takeover. Be sure to catch him then. And if you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Football League World TV, that would be really appreciated. We're also across Twitter and Facebook, Football League World. Just have to look for us. You can give us a like or a subscribe. That'd be really appreciated. But that's it for this week. We will speak to you very soon.